When you ask film people who their favorite director is, you'll probably get a lot of poncy, clever boots answers. I don't have a poncy, clever boots answer, I just freaking love Guy Ritchie. It bears saying that I'm not exactly the intended audience for a Guy Ritchie film. He makes movies for blokes about blokes, and yeah, I ain't it. But I am a sucker for complex stories focusing on male relationships featuring fast-talking crime, action, cheeky humor, and great clothes. So, whenever I watch a new Guy Ritchie movie, I feel like I'm being spoken to in a dream by some Mockney oracle who whispered truths about my soul, and I ask how? How did you know? How did you find me? And he laughs and disappears in a cloud of rapid-fire snarky dialogue. I walk into a Guy Ritchie film absolutely thrilled because I don't know what bonkers nonsense he's going to pull next. Trick me into thinking a car chase is over because you rammed a car between two buildings, only to reveal there's a window and we're only halfway through? Sherlock Holmes parkours to every event like the glorious hobo chic gremlin he is? Big elephants just because you can't stop me? I love him. I love him. I want him to adopt me and buy us matching suits. I'm now the fine arts version of Eggsy Unwin, and Guy Ritchie is teaching me that aesthetic maketh awesome. But, it's not just sick tricks. I love sick tricks, it's not just sick tricks. Yeah, cool camera angles and clever hyper-stylized editing, and bumpin' soundtracks every time.
Oh, brother dear, let my bed be made, for I feel gripe of the woody nightshade.
Don't you make me put you over my knee.
So you don't want to dance, but you do want to wrestle.
No, I did not say that.
But Guy Ritchie's movies are smart. It's very easy to be taken in by the rowdiness of his movies and write him off as any other reckless shoot-'em-up or action-y fest, but there's more to it. His dialogue is trademarked for being fast and clever, and even if he didn't actually write the script, you'll find that it always manages to slip in.
His name is Fahok. It's spelled with a P-A, so it sounds like Fahok.
Please!
All right, Fahok, Conda Fahok.
Please!
Plus, if you deconstruct his plot and character arcs, they're clever and unexpected. Don't get me wrong, he's no Chris Nolan, who is, but he's not really trying to be. Instead, Guy's trying to give problems and resolutions that we haven't seen before, or if we have, depict them in ways we've never seen before. Entertainment for entertainment's sake is no crime if it's honest and does its job well. So now we're going to take a quick tour of Guy's movies that mean the most to me and talk about why they're just that amazing. Sherlock Holmes. Back in 2009, my family watched Sherlock Holmes. Christmas Day, small theater, absolute first row so the screen's distorted and you had to brace your hands against your lower spine so your back wouldn't hurt. Every second was worth it. I loved it. I love Sherlock Holmes. I lit up when I first saw the trailer, but that trailer was nothing compared to the movie. I had never seen a movie like Sherlock Holmes before, and it was the first time I realized that to make a movie, there were choices and preferences made on how people talked, how the city looked, what the movie sounded like, everything. I don't want to be that person who's an apologist on Maine, but I honestly completely believe that Guy shaped a whole generation of Sherlock Holmes, and you can take that check to the bank. People cribbing Guy Ritchie is something I already talked about in my Robin Hood video, but that was a 1 hour and 47 minute casualty to the copyright purge wars. So I'll be brief. Before this, Sherlock Holmes was seen as stuffy, posh, and overall just blech. But then after Sherlock Holmes comes out, suddenly he's edgy and new and does drugs and has real person problems. I mean, look me in the eye and tell me this.
Could you turn that off, please?
Oh good, you're up.
Could have happened if our boys hadn't kicked down the door and opened the way.
Good God! That was gunfire.
No. Hammer and nail, wasn't it?
Watson, I am in the process of inventing a device that suppresses the sound of a gunshot.
Also tell me that Stephen wasn't just being reactionary when he made Benny Boy say this line.
I'm not a psychopath, Anderson. I'm a high-functioning sociopath. Do your research.
The casting was fantastic, and can we just take a moment to appreciate Guy Ritchie's ability to pack his movies with some of the most excellent people ever? Not only does he get all those good boys, I love those good boys, but he always manages to find people with perfect chemistry. The standouts for this movie are our four main characters, Sherlock, Watson, Irene, Blackwood. All acted to perfection, partly due to the wonderful work of the actual actors, snaps to them, they're good at their jobs, but also because Guy knows that every good story is built on character. Sherlock is what makes the zany drama run, and run it does. Like I said, he's no longer a stuffy old bore. He's wild and crazy and makes bad choices and falls in love and got hurt, and boy, as an understimulated creative type living in a tiny town with the fatal flaw of having to try everything twice to figure out not just if something hurt, but why something hurt. Yeah, that meant a lot to me. Sherlock was brilliant and clever, but he was also a mess. He didn't respect boundaries and took people for granted and ignored rules like don't lie to the police, or don't steal stuff, or don't do cocaine. Sherlock made a lot of mistakes, and that mattered. It was important to the story and the world that he managed to make up for them, or at least tried to. Yeah, he could be rude and glib to people because he worked fast with a lot of fast people and didn't have time to slow down. But he's not a bad man. When he caused hurt, you can see that he feels bad for it.
And chambermaids were once such a liberal breed.
My wife's a chambermaid. Anyhow.
When he sees hurt, you can see he tries to fix it.
Just joking about the wife. Huh?
This movie taught me that eccentricity can be charming, but it can also be painful to those around you, and that being smart doesn't replace being kind. Which is something that, interestingly enough, some future iterations failed to learn. The plot of the movie is focused on Sherlock overcoming the occult and not giving in to human doubt and fear, but his arc is having to realize that loving people means not always getting your way. The glue of the movie is the relationship between Sherlock and Watson. It's not about how they are so perfect for each other. Sherlock needs Watson because emotional support crutch, and Watson needs Sherlock because he's dull and drab and useless without him. It's that they are very close, truly brothers not in blood, but in bond.
Paying the rent of my own soon. Thanks to you.
Get that out of my face.
It's not in your face, it's in my hand.
Get what's in your hand out of my face.
Clarky!
The problem is, Sherlock hasn't been treating Watson right for a long time, and now they might actually fall apart because of it. Sherlock sees Watson's plans to get married and move out as wanting to move on. He can't understand a world where he doesn't drag Watson about and have him do whatever he wants, and now that Watson isn't caving to him anymore, now that he sees that, oh, this isn't a phase, he has to learn to let him be free. A lot of people like to frame Sherlock and Watson as a romantic couple because, shipping. And yeah, you can argue that these two are like an old married couple. I'm not gonna stop you.
Blackwood certainly seems to have got the crowd into something of a fear frenzy.
Well, I'm certain they'll disperse once his feet have stopped twitching. Care to come along?
No, you're on your own, old cock. I've no business with him whilst he's alive.
Well, suit yourself, mother hen.
But I love the platonic intimacy of them just being friends, because I've been in situations like that. Sherlock and Watson will bicker and snap at each other.
Oh, Watson, now you're not making any sense.
You're not human!
But they'll also know perfectly well where the other's stuff is and their old habits, and recognize when certain events are Chekhov's gun going off.
Open the door. Thanks, Doctor.
Holmes, what are you doing?
Nothing.
Are you wearing a...
False nose? No.
Tell me that wasn't...
Look at you. Why is the only woman you've ever cared about a world-class criminal? Are you a masochist?
Allow me to explain.
Allow me. She's the only adversary who ever outsmarted you. Twice. Made a proper idiot out of you.
Because they saw that gun on the fireplace 5 years ago, and the audience has barely been around for 2 hours. So when you see them argue, it hurts.
9 Elms. A factory by the river. Well done, Watson. That should lead us right to Blackwood, dead or alive.
Not us. You.
Yes. Just a figure of speech, old boy.
And that subplot with Irene, I am filth for a good romance. And the story between Sherlock and Irene, though playing around the edges, gets me to my core. These are 2 sledgehammers of human beings, and they should break each other into a dozen pieces, and you get the impression that maybe they have, and maybe they kept a few of the other spare parts when they did.
Theft of Velasquez's portrait from King of Spain. Missing naval documents lead to resignation of Bulgarian Prime Minister. Scandalous affair and engagement of Habsburg prince to Romanov princess.
I was simply studying your methods, should the authorities ask me to hunt you down.
But they can also work together. Their wit and doggedness and viewing the world on its side clicking together like 2 different puzzles that have wildly different pictures, but pieces cut from the same stamp. And the way Rachel McAdams and Robert Downey Jr. play it, my heart bleeds. I've seen a lot of romantic acting in my life, but you can feel in every frame how much love and hurt is in their eyes. Every time they meet, you can see the obvious war on Sherlock's face of whether he wants to run away, or kiss her, or fight her, or arrest her. And while Irene plays it close to the chest, you believe that when she offers to run away with him, she means it.
Come with me. What if we trusted each other?
You're not listening.
It's mature and complicated, and while ultimately they end where they began, at least they're honest with each other and themselves about how they feel. It's a doomed romance, but it's an honest one.
You'll miss me, Sherlock.
Sadly, yes.
Also a rundown of things I wanted to talk about before I ran out of time getting emotional over people having emotions. Victorian London is punctilious and unexpected and cool. This is the best shorthand for smart people thinking fast, oh my gosh!
First point of attack. 2, throat, paralyzed vocal cords, stop screaming. 3, got to be heavy drinker, floating rib to liver. 4, finally, dragging left leg, fist to patella. Summary prognosis, conscious in 90 seconds, martial efficacy, quarter of an hour at best, full faculty recovery, unlikely.
Guy clearly did his homework, or had his team do their homework, and it shows. These jokes are funny, and no one is above being the butt of one.
Gently, gently, Watson. Be gentle with me. Ah!
And oh my gosh, this music is amazing.
Juste évident que toi et ton jouet. Cours, petit lapin, cours.
Avec plaisir.
Guy obviously isn't composing the soundtrack for any of his movies, but he always lands such excellent composers who do such fascinating things, and this movie introduced me to Hans Zimmer, so thank you. King Arthur. The first time I watched King Arthur, I was in the dark days of writing my senior thesis, and it is honestly one of the major reasons I got through. It's hard to explain the combination of mental exhaustion and frenetic hyperactivity that I was living with at the time, but I could have dug a hole 10 feet deep and then buried myself in it just so I could go to sleep. And then I watched this movie, and it felt like it set my soul on fire. I put off watching King Arthur for a long time because I do this thing where I don't want to admit that I like something as much as I do, because my brain runs in these cycles where I fixate on things and strip every last ounce of serotonin I can before moving on. So I try to limit exposure to susceptible topics, and in this case, as we all can probably guess, it was this coat. So I really didn't know much about the movie before I watched it. Didn't see any trailers, didn't even realize Guy directed it. It was dark, it had this coat, but then I found The Devil and the Huntsman by Sam Lee.
You will feel it for a few hours.
Young men came from hunting, faint and weary. What is that, my lord, my dearie?
And that song is amazing, and I just kept staring at the coat, being haunted by its lovely warming potential, so I caved. Okay? I did. I watched the movie and I loved it. I was just so shaken because you had giant war elephants in the first 10 minutes. No big deal. That's just something we can throw away because we got more in the back. This movie gets me to my bones. I'd come a long way since Sherlock Holmes and knew exactly what I loved. And that's a big rowdy boy being beautiful and sloppy and dangerous and vulnerable and smart. Arthur is a prince traumatized by a coup that claimed both of his parents, and he took that fear and tempered it into brutal street savvy because his is a will that will not be crushed. Instead of our usual noble dumb idiot, he plays the game, giving bribes, stabbing backs, and making friends according to need. He's smart and snappy and only fails because sometimes being clever and bold and violent isn't enough. There are factors outside even a crime lord's control. This movie isn't interested in knights and their honor and doing what's right because that's what you do. It even takes an aside to say, no, hang on. This is a man raised by prostitutes in a brothel and has watched decades of powerful men step on the small. He's not here for them, nor they for him.
What are we to be called, Bedivere? Knights of the Bordello?
I'm gonna be forced to tell them there's not a bollock between you. At which point, Bedivere, you're gonna get very angry and tell me off. You'll say something along the lines of, what were you gonna do if they wanted to fight? And I'm gonna say, I was never gonna fight. And you're gonna say, well, what was gonna happen? I was gonna say, that's what you're here for, Bedivere, you big silly posh bastard.
Guy Ritchie threw out the rule book and asked what a king would do to regain his throne if he were down and dirty and a thug, and it's great. This is a world more concerned with putting food in its mouth than fulfilling a male power fantasy, and I think a lot of people didn't realize that. They see Arthur collapsing all the time and think, oh, what a sucky hero. Like, all those good speeches and sick tricks and clever schemes and cool moves he's pulled up to this moment don't mean anything. Like, showing some vulnerability is a bad thing. Like, maybe they didn't get the whole problem that Arthur is lying to himself about who he is and can't accept the reality of his truth, and that inability to move forward is manifesting itself physically. Sorry, I got it worked up there. I'm just not as forgiving as Guy is.
Every man in himself is aristocratic, that he is his own king. He takes a sojourn into the material world, has to climb up all the different rungs on the ladder, and ultimately has to return to himself. You've got to take away all these crutches and stand as the man that you are, and you're liberated from your whole thing. So that is the story of King Arthur.
Do you think that most people that are watching the film are going to get that, though? They're just going to get an entertaining story. They're just going to see a bunch of cool stuff, some drama play out. But this is fascinating that you're operating so many levels underneath it.
Do you need to understand all that? I'm not sure if you do. Depends where you are on the ladder. So you can just go along, have a nice bit of entertainment. Good guy, bad guy, everything's literal. There's nothing wrong with literalism. It is what it is. It's the game. You can glean what you can glean when you're ready to glean what you're ready to glean.
People called it bad and they have wrong opinions, and that's fine. But honestly, judge a thing on its own merits, not the ones you transplanted over from Return of the King. This movie, again, boasts a cast I love, filled with the most surprising odds and ends that are all tossed together and allowed to be great. The ineffable coat. Can we drop this gag? I think we're done with this gag. Charlie Hunnam is buzzing with the energy of having a story and a character and a director he loves, and I could kiss him for the dimensions he brings to Arthur. Jaimon Hunso is wise and tired and will smelt this revolution with his own hands. Aidan Gillen is Aidan Gillen.
Put your ring back on, honey tits. You haven't had enough porridge this morning to talk like that. And if you like that sword so much, your lordship, you can keep it to peel your grapes.
Now, that would have hurt a lot more if I left the ring on.
Jude Law is sneery and charming, and by the end validates being so evil because all of his bridges have now burned.
Tell me what it is and I'll make it stop.
Oh.
I love you very much. You have one nephew. Now, play with me.
And Astrid Berger-Frisbee,
Frisbee?
nailed it, is just lovely because her name is Mage. She's very wise and powerful and has no interest in making people feel comfortable, and she has things to do, and Arthur isn't one of them.
Are you falling for me like I'm falling for you? We want to be careful. It's a neat trick. You'll have to teach me how to do that.
Put him back on his horse.
This movie is dark and speaks of greater filth than it needs to show, but it's also funny and finds joy and friendship and has hope. And that's really one of the shining glories of the film. Even though it lives under brutal oppression and tragedy and manipulation, it still finds reasons to go on.
Run to the river. You go first. We don't have time to argue, Bill.
Some of us will make it out in time. Some of us won't.
Well, bear some than none!
You go first.
Not a single person is free in this film. Even the villain is changed by his voracious want for power and the horrors of what he's done to get it. But watching King Arthur, you can see that there are reasons to laugh and have friends and move on. Suffering will occur where it may, but if you can, don't let it destroy you. I adore this film, and I will always be angry because I could have had 5 more. Do you know how rich the lore could have been if we had 5 more movies? Do you even realize all of the soft world building Guy did in anticipation of 5 more movies? He cut a love subplot because he deserved it to be developed over 5 more movies. Why don't you respect Guy's work for what it is? The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I basically have 3 stomping grounds when it comes to stories: Victorian Gothics, Gangster Turf Wars, and the Cold War. Guess which one this is? This movie starts with a bang and only manages to escalate from there. Napoleon is witty and terrible, Ilya is unstable and magnificent, and Gabby will turn this car around. It is silly and entertaining and amazingly self-aware because where else have you seen the delicious cosmic irony of an American and a Russian teaming up to stop Nazi sympathizers as told by a snarky Brit? The egos of 2 world powers have been simmered down into these 2 giant men, and the hostilities have been reduced to a series of microaggressions that entrench in the conscious far more than an actual wound. Because a broken leg you heal from. Karen sniping you at the PTA bake sale? Oh, that you take to your grave.
No, not at yours. The Rabanne.
You can't put a Paco Rabanne belt on a Batou.
She's not going to wear a Batou.
What's wrong with a Batou?
Nothing. If you're fat, the Dior goes with the Rabanne.
It won't match.
It doesn't have to match. These are American made. And very low tech.
That bow tie doesn't work with that suit.
This movie also feels like the purest distillation of what Guy Ritchie wants to be the heart of all his movies: the study of relationships between men. These 2 start by trying to break each other's necks to being agonizingly hurt at the thought of being betrayed by each other. And, sidestep, it's hardwired into my DNA to adore saddos that have big hearts and troubled pasts and protect themselves with big muscles and even bigger emotional walls. Also, I have a huge weak spot for the bloody glam of the Soviet Union, so I was done for before the movie even started. Are you kidding me, Guy? Did you have to do this? Was there a gun to your head saying you had to destroy me like this? Like, here, this is amazing. The characters all start out as caricatures, only for the unique details to be filled in, and this is no exception. We see right away that Ilya is super smart and super strong and super fast, but his weakness is that he sometimes has these fits. And yeah, it's a running joke where big scary commie man has violent outbursts he can't control. Ha ha ha, here's a musical cue.
Or was it your mother's reputation? I understand that she was extremely popular amongst your father's friends after he was shipped off to Siberia.
But a good German girl knows never to mix the blood of a racehorse with that of a cart horse.
Uncle Rudy? That's not a very nice thing to say.
Don't be so protective. I'm sure our weightlifter can defend himself.
And we don't think much of it. There's plot and character development to deal with. We're much more focused on the growing relationship between these 2 morons. The conclusion of the movie isn't, hey, do we stop the bomb from going off and defeat the Nazis? It's, hey, can these 2 men resolve this relationship and move forward and be friends? And Ilya believes, yes, they can be friends. The plans are destroyed, Napoleon's an okay dude, they can go about in peace. Only the plans aren't destroyed. Napoleon has them, and he lied to Ilya about it. After everything, after all they've been through, Napoleon used Ilya. They're not friends. Napoleon lied. And then finally we see Ilya lose control. It's not funny this time. It's really deeply sad. Ilya is a person to us. We understand that he's not just a super spy because the story needs him to be. Ilya had to make himself the best to overcome the shame smeared across his whole family, and if he slips, if there is anything he cannot control about himself, it is a devastating loss. Even though Ilya can make himself better, faster, stronger, smarter, he cannot best the psychological horrors in his head. He cannot keep someone he cares about from hurting him. Napoleon, in turn, is a fairly static character. Beginning to end, he is a Saturday morning cartoon villain given James Bond's body and an emotional allowance. But that feels very calculated, given Ilya's emotional turmoil. Napoleon is the constant. He is terrible and remains so throughout the movie, it's just that now he cares about 3 people instead of 1. Give me that sequel so Napoleon can have a midlife crisis. Let Guy have his sequels. My descriptions may sound biased here, but I love Napoleon as a character, almost as much as I love Henry Cavill's ability to give naughty slime man a puppy dog look that just nerfed me on sight.
You feeling okay?
Enough buff boys, let's talk about Gabby. Gabby is great. Due to the thesis of Guy's work and the general blokiness of his films, it's not really surprising there aren't a lot of women running around. Homie is not passing the Bechdel test 6 days out of the week. But the women he does have in his films are great, and pass the other entries in the tasting menu of female representation just fine. They live their own lives, have their own agendas, they feel as complete as their male counterparts, and while they are all tough and dangerous, it's because they live in a tough and dangerous world. But most importantly, they're not one-note femme fatales. They listen to loud music, like Pretty Things, provide safe spaces for other women, and don't put up with the mountains of crap their boys give. Good, evil, emotional, calm, they are all smart and well-defined, and I want to give Guy a high five. Show me another male-centric exploded creator man that does the same, and he'll also get a high five. This is a positive space. Except for you, Steven. But with Gabby, she is so clearly the paper and glue keeping these 2 lunatics together. Without her, this bonkers brofest would never exist. It is her relations that gives the plot an in, but also her knowledge and know-how that saves the day, and her high charisma and empathy that cracks open these 2 walnuts and reveals their squishy insides, and nope, that was a bad metaphor, I should have found another one. Gabby is the emotional center of the movie without ever letting it diminish her personality, desires, and skill, and I love the movie for that. I love The Man from U.N.C.L.E. because it's bombastic and silly and witty and extreme, and until I watched it, I thought it was just another distasteful spy flick with really gross things to say about men and women. Basically, if you weren't these guys, you sucked. Then I watched it, and I see my mistakes now. I repented. Guy, don't discount me as an air guy. Please. Guy, no! The Gentleman. The Gentleman is the tale of an American pop baron in London trying to get out of the game during a very fraught handoff, and all the fun hijinks that ensue. It's weird and grimy and fast-paced and irreverent and smart. Whereas Man from U.N.C.L.E. was rife with its sick tricks and twisty cameras and clever boots editing, Gentleman chose to flex on a dense plot of intrigue, snafu, and dialogue sharper than Michelle Dockery's heels. I spent 2 hours cackling to myself over the witty repartee when I wasn't whooping with the audience because they had a chav music video in the movie.
Not 10 or 20. Man's egg got cracked and his legs went jelly.
That was just a thing. It made sense in the pot baron murder wars. What is this movie? A lot of people have described it as vintage Guy or a return to Guy's roots, which seems kind of strange to me because, sure, it has the same sort of realistic, small-scale, earthy crime setting compared to his more fantastical productions. But they all have the same heart of intelligent garbage people doing crimes and accidentally catching a case of the feels. The Gentleman is just the most Guy Ritchie of films, if you'll allow me a bit of pretension, and not just because this is his first original film in the last 12 years. It's the purest distillation of his interests, hobbies, and habits. Not only is it his other films on steroids, it's filled with Guyisms you can see seeded throughout his interests and work.
Absolutely.
You're basically dressed like Guy, really, for the film.
Yeah.
I think I'm dressed like Guy.
You know, he actually
You're
took
dressed
me
like
shopping.
Guy.
Yeah.
And you're dressed like Guy. Everyone dressed like Guy.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't think it made the movie, sadly, but there was an enormous philosophical explanation of who wears the clothes, does the clothes wear the man, does the man wear the clothes.
Well, you also seem to understand the significance of a proper attire.
Indeed, I do. I believe a sense of ownership is vital in every aspect of life, perhaps never more so than when it comes to wardrobe. For every look, there is a season, and for every season, a strategy.
If you don't own something, you're not the boss. You have to take full responsibility for everything that you do. Why be subservient? You must be the master of your own kingdom.
If you lot are unhappy, you should share your thoughts with your friends. Nice friends, talk it out, find a positive solution. But no, all you lot choose squalor, drowning in your liberal white guilt.
Guy, do you have an apology for Charlie?
Or a
I think you do.
One or the other. I can do better than that. Well, sort of better than that. Yeah, you know what's coming, you naughty girl.
Now I understand why you're seated at the head of the table. Snuck that one right by me, didn't you, naughty little girl? Making a splash with the gentry.
I've always been attracted to women that are attracted to cars, because I'm not. And I like that, again, it's a sort of juxtaposition. I like that. And there are quite a few girls I know that know a lot about cars and are terribly passionate about it. And I also like the idea that it's a garage where ladies can go and they don't feel intimidated or uncomfortable by traditional mechanics.
Roger's on the range. How many times have I told you? I don't want Roger up front. This is a sanctuary for the ladies.
I'd much rather talk about something more facile or philosophical. That way you can find out if you're on the...
Not enjoy small talk. Or if you do, you just don't ever have it.
Well, small talk. Actually, I do like, but small talk I feel is seldom about small talk. It's like the English talking about the weather. I don't think it's ever talking about the weather. I think it's some form of lubrication to understand the contours of one's character.
Now starts the alpha dance. They're not really talking about clothes, Raymond. Oh, no. They're like a pair of old doggies sniffing round one another's intellectual arseholes.
Rather, like, I don't know what political correctness means.
What are you, like a Four Tops tribute act or something? The Four Skins! The Redskins! Whoa, 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 here come the Indians! Bit of the old northern soul, is it, boys? Putting the gay back in Marvin Gaye. I'm on fire over here, lads. Come on, I need some back and forth. Come on, what do you got for me? What do you got for me? Now make it quick. Make it funny. You! Jeez, that's disappointing.
I love seeing people's interests shine through in their work, especially when it's highly specific and in this dreaded age of mass appeal and studio interference. I will admit, though, that the movie has a bit of a high entrance cost. It's frankly just not a movie meant for everyone. You kind of already have to be invested in crime, problematic faves, rough and rowdy boys, good clothes, wackadoo escalation, and sleek dialogue that balances bawdiness with sophistication. Just like how you're not going to like Guy Ritchie's other more commercial, if you could call it that, movies. If you can't buy into that whole vibe, you're extra not going to have a good time with this one. I mean, a dude falling to his death from a window is a punchline here.
That sounds like quite an extreme accident.
Yeah, it's more like a death, really.
And to be honest, there's a lot to unpack even if you're committed to the legend. The world building is dense and we have to learn it real quick, and while Guy does us the favor of allowing Charlie Hunnam and Hugh Grant to cut their teeth on each other, having a plot explained to you by two dudes is a bit dull.
Ching, ching.
Fletcher.
Buenos tardes, Raimundo.
I should stab you with that rolling pin.
Oh, don't be I was just hoping we could have a cozy little drink together.
All that said, it's deeply clear that every member of the cast knew exactly what Guy was on about. From Michelle Dockery stalking into her chop shop on 4-inch heels, can you tell I love those shoes? I really love those shoes. To Guy Ritchie's potential soulmate Charlie Hunnam lamenting that men aren't romantic anymore as he threatens punks and smokes a joint, to Colin Farrell being hideous and bawdy and wise and living his best life, to Hugh Grant's everything?
Quite like it when you talk dirty to me. I can feel myself engorging.
Oh, and that Matthew McConaughey guy being an oasis of the most Texas business murder man I think I have honestly ever seen.
I am not for sale. And even if I was, you're several zeros short. Now, you may be able to buy your man sausage for that, but to me it just looks rude at breakfast.
The other actors were also really great, but these were my personal faves. Guy has presented all of these actors with such a specific world and set of people to play, but they all feel so lived in. Every one of them is slightly too suspiciously terrible, but they all have their own quirks and attitudes that they feel like unique, real people. I would be terrified, but I wouldn't be surprised if I bumped into them on the street. And it's this sort of conviction and a myriad of drive-by revisions to make the movie tighter than the family Tweed that helps make the film so human, which is the gritty sideways magic of it. It's extreme and weird and bloody and brilliant and hilarious, but oh my word, is it human. While this movie doesn't hold any landmark occasion for me, I glory in it because it exists. He made it exist. Guy Ritchie made this movie exist. It feels like such a long shot to explain, and I honestly believe I've turned people away by attempting to do so, but Guy still got it made. We live in an era where it's fun, if not habit, to decry the studios and the executives for mucking with things, panicking over something specific and strange that might not make its money back, even if it's fantastic, which results in films being the blandest of water crackers, or a raging frankenbeast of a mess that just keeps pulling me. Have you guys seen Robin Hood? Right, I'm sorry, focus. Guy made a film that was so very him, and miracle of miracles, he was rewarded for it. I think it's important to see that you can make a niche film and do well and be respected, and not be Quentin Kubrick or Steven Scorsese, and that it's enough to make something for yourself and people with your taste and sensibilities and do well with it. Guy Ritchie is a mad lad and a proper geezer, and I'm really starting to get nervous about throwing this slang around because I don't fully understand it. I am an American.
Proper geezer.
That's a compliment.
Oh,
Yeah.
the highest. Will he
good
let
dish.
you down? No, mate, he's a geezer. Proper geezer.
I'm pretty sure Guy is able to do all this stuff because he just doesn't ask if he can. He makes movies he thinks are fun and have heart and works with people because he thinks they'll get along, and I love that. Even if I wasn't in love with this highly specific intersection of content, I would be thrilled because so much of the film industry feels very chilly and formulaic. People drop out and scripts are remade and execs just don't get it and everything is a numbers game. And, you know, maybe that's the case for Guy's films as much as all the rest, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels like he's just having fun. Also, Guy, please, take me shopping. Just once.